Welcome to the In Peace We Rest podcast. It's happening, you guys. Today is going to be quite the ride. We didn't know what we were going to come in here to talk about today, but there's a lot of energy around it, and we are extremely excited to share. That being said, Jasmine, maybe it would be a beautiful idea for us to kind of just anchor into the space, drop in for a minute.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this conversation. This conversation just makes me think of like the reason that we wanted to do the podcast. Jerry,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, just real quick for those of you, Jerry's not here today. He is at Get On Fire and he's having so much fun. So it's just Roxy and I today. So it's not like we've shut him up, but we've shipped him away and he's off having experiences. So you just get us down.
We're all experiencing FOMO today for sure. Like he's off living the festival vibes. We're having FOMO over that. He's going to have serious FOMO after this conversation, but I'm excited to hear his perspective on that later too. So yes, let's just anchor in for a minute.
Let's just find where we're sitting. On Earth. Let's find where we're sitting here in Earth, on Earth, on this place. So you just want to close your eyes for a second. Take in a deep breath and exhale. In these kind of conversations, I really love to find where I'm sitting. So I really like to actually feel, can I feel my butt on the chair? And can I breathe down and like surrender to the seat and allow it to come around my body a little bit? Can I feel the back of my body on the chair or in the car or wherever you are? Just let your back body kind of get more in alignment. I tend to lean forward. So I'm just going to bring my spine over and down. The act of bringing the body back stops the forward momentum and just puts us right back here where we are. Softening the jaw, the back of the head, the hands, the arms, and just sinking down. Taking one last big inhale in and exhaling down. And here we are. And I think my chair is a little bit to one side, so I'm going to switch my chair over.
That was lovely. Thank you. I needed that so bad today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We are going to be talking about some weird shit today. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about some weird shit. And I'm ready to also talk about how you talk about weird shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's less about the weird shit we're talking about and how it is we go about talking about it. Because weird shit is happening to every single one of us every day. It is this wild process of discernment of what do I share? Who do I share it with? Why am I sharing it in the first place? Right?
Yes. Yes to all those things.
I'm going to let you start off this conversation, Jasmine, because I think this whole thing kind of started with your own experience with weird shit and like, okay, now what? So do you mind, like, you don't have to go into the details of it because I know we don't necessarily want to air anything that's ours, but.
Yeah, I had an experience today and it's kind of been an experience that I feel like it's been coming up for a little bit. And I'm not going to get too much in details because it's not my own story. If it was mine, I would so sing it from the rooftops, but it's not. This little piece of it though was mine. And I kind of want to backpedal for just like 1 second and just say, oftentimes when we enter this journey, we enter this space, we start the path, whatever you want to call it, something pretty significant happens to you. And then you have a profound experience through meditation, through some kind of from the other side touch to you that just cannot be explained. That is so weird. And in my instance today, it kind of involved another person. So I am sitting in meditation today, and I'm open to communication, especially when it comes to people who I care about, when it comes to people who are in my circle, who are my friends, who come to the studio. Like, I'm really quite open for that sort of thing. And someone in my life recently lost someone, kind of. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into it. Someone recently passed to the other side. I'm sitting in meditation today, and I just have this moment of like, oh man. And I can just feel it coming in. And for me, and everyone has their different sort of like tells, if you will, or ways that they interpret information. Usually when I get like super duper cold, to me, there is some communication from a different realm on other side of the veil, heaven, whatever the words are for you, from somewhere different besides here. And I just get so cold. And then I get this knowing to look up, and I get this knowing to look at a particular book. I flip random to a particular page, and the information is so freaking clear. And I'm like, wow. And then I have the dilemma that we're going to talk about today. Do I share? How do I share? What do I do with this information? And then you kind of get into this place of like, I think this is how imposter syndrome kind of starts for people like us, where you start to think, well, no, I just made it up. That's not real. That didn't happen. That like there's no way that I could have forced that to happen. There's no way I could have picked a random book, flipped to a random page, and this show up.
Yeah. Incredibly specific information. Yes.
Yes. Incredibly specific information. And I know like this is not the first time it's happened to me, and it's certainly not the first time that it's happened. I know it's happened to you as well. And it happens to people all the time. And I find this sort of scenario tends to be kind of a jumping off point for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think whether it is a mediumship type experience, like what you're describing with this like direct connection to the other side, a specific person on the other side, or maybe it's your own personal experience that you've had in meditation. Maybe you just saw some weird shit, or you had a crazy dream, or the psychedelic experience, whatever it is, when you're like, oh my gosh, I just saw, felt, heard, smelled something, who knows? Mm-hmm. And I know that it's bigger than what I currently know.
Yeah.
What do I do with this? Right? So I guess my first question to you would be, how do you go about processing that experience for yourself?
I think similar to kind of what we did at the beginning of the podcast is that you kind of have to slow your body down for just a second, because this experience is really exciting. These kind of experiences really do jump your vibration up, and you kind of get into this higher up place. And so for me, it's like, okay, hang on, let me come down for a second. Let me settle into this. Let me start to ask questions. Should I share this information? Is this information for me to share? And also, who should I share it with? Who are sort of safe places to share it with? And if there is a fly who is hanging out with me. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I think, yeah. Does that make sense? Like settling your body into it and really asking yourself questions of like, this can be really exciting. And sometimes these experiences truly are just for you, but sometimes you do need to share. And I think it can be that simple of just asking that question and filling into your intuition to get the answer.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you spoke to the idea of like kind of pulling yourself out of it. right? When you do have a crazy experience like that, like a natural reaction to your human body is almost to go into this fight or flight mode, like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And we hear this so often as we're leading people in meditation, is when they do start to drop in and they have those experiences, they tend to pull themselves out. They're like right back into their body because, like, is this safe? Is this not safe? This is foreign. It's unfamiliar. What do I do with this?
Yes. I think like this does happen a lot where you will start down the road of like, oh, something's here, a spirit guide, a person or whatever, an experience is about to happen. And then you go into the mindset of like, oh my God, how am I going to talk about this? Like you start to really kind of pull yourself out. So the best advice I can give in that part of the situation is breathe. You will remember the story. I promise. You will remember the story and you will be able to tell in details. I still get that sometimes when I get like a real crazy one coming in. I'm just like, oh my, I cannot wait to tell someone about this. But finish the experience, finish it. Then you can talk about it.
Well, and I think too, like, I'm so glad that you spoke to that because there's this piece of like going into dreams, right? They say all the time, you can't go into, like, you can't wake up from a dream and then fall asleep and go right back into the same dream. Right. And so oftentimes we're trying to do that. Okay, I have to remember everything so that I can share it. So I love that. I love the idea of just trusting everything that comes to you and that you're going to remember what you're supposed to remember and what you need to if it's meant for you. I think so often when we're having these experiences, just to share, to go back to that imposter syndrome piece that you were speaking to, is there it's this feeling of, am I actually experiencing this? Is this real?
Yes. Yeah.
Real. Am I making it up? Where is that coming from? What do I do with this? And so I love the notion of just kind of anchoring yourself into the present moment, calming your body, slowing down and saying, I'm safe. I'm open. I'm ready. Go ahead. I'm here. And just letting it flow, allowing it. That's the word I want to use, allowing it.
And I wonder, the thought that came into my brain as you were speaking just then was a validation too. Like, it's like you're almost immediately wanting validation of the experience before you even had it all the way. And I didn't 100% know where this conversation was going to go, but I really do love this conversation of like, before you even think about where you can share it, are you allowing yourself to really receive the whole thing before you're like, oh God, I got to tell someone. I got to, in this world of like, we're experiencing an event and then we're Marco Poloing, we are Facebooking, we are texting about it before it's even done. And I think we tend to want to do that a lot as we go into these meditation spaces as well. Therefore, kind of pulling us out before the full experience has happened. And I for one, have definitely been guilty of that for sure. Because you do get really excited.
Same. I've gone through moments where I'm like, holy shit, this is happening. I'm like, holy shit, this is happening. Like, all ends of the spectrum. I'm either terrified or I'm beyond excited. And immediately after that, when you're able to just like reassure yourself, validate yourself, then comes the question of like, well, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do with this, if anything at all? Yeah. So once you've been able to kind of like process with yourself, validate yourself, get your wits about you, if you will, how do you go about sharing? And how do you go about deciding who to share with and why?
I think it always is. I mean, of course, you have to take into the experience that happened. You always have to say, like, what was it that the experience? And usually for me, there's a clear if it is something that I need to share, usually it's like a relationship sort of thing, right? Where it is between you and another person. Like, it's very clearly there's another person. So I think there's that situation. And then we can kind of go down that rabbit hole of how you decide, okay, I see clearly it has to do with this particular person or this particular thing. Now there's like that line of questioning, right? And then I feel like you also have like your safe people. You're safe people who you can share experiences with and who you can feel safe to contemplate with. And I mean, obviously, Roxy is one of my people when created this podcast because that sort of thing. Roxy and Jerry and a lot of people at the studio, right? I have a kind of my little list of people who I'm like, oh my God, girl, guess what just happened? Like, and also I think, you know, then we can kind of go into that space. So maybe we'll need to kind of separate them because I think that we can go down those two little rabbit holes really well. And that's all really exciting because there's two very different reasons I feel like you would see those groups of people.
Yeah. I would love to kind of explore the latter. Like, because usually if you've given yourself your validation first, then we also tend to seek external validation before we truly feel safe to share it to someone else if we're supposed to.
Yeah.
So what does that like contemplation, that processing piece look like for you when you do reach out?
Yeah. So when I do reach out to my safe group, and I want to talk a little bit just for a second about what qualities you might be looking for in someone who's in your safe group of people.
Love that.
I wouldn't say that I would, if I felt like someone was super skeptical of this sort of thing, they would not be in my safe group. If this what we're trying to do here, what we're talking about here is not trying to persuade someone to believe in what you're doing or what you're feeling. You are creating this group of people that are safe for you to share an experience without feeling like you have to convince them of what happened. You are simply creating a space where you could say, oh my gosh, this thing happened to me. And you don't have to worry about if they agree or disagree, because that's not really what it's about. It's about you voicing an experience that you had. And then you can go from there. So I feel like number one is maybe not picking someone who's skeptical, because again, this is not about us trying to convince someone to be on this path, because we're never going to convince anyone to be on this path if they don't want to be. First off, just like number one rule of being on the path is you can't convince anyone to be on the path. And sometimes we want to use these experiences to convince someone to be on the path. Number two is I feel for me, when people are in my safe group, they are question askers. They themselves are really good at asking questions and they want to know information and they're going to engage in the conversation with me. And maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe that's not what is in everyone's safe group, but someone who can do that, who can really say, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And the third thing is, how do I receive? Like, am I open to the person asking me questions? And that's not everyone. Not everyone, at least for me, can kind of question me. I don't receive that well from everyone, and that's just who I am as a person. So that's something that I look for in a group of someone who would be my person. And I'm like really describing Roxy. I mean, I'm like, what does Roxy do? Because Roxy is like my number one person that I will go to if I was contemplating. Obviously, I have other people too, but if I'm going to contemplate someone, there's not a lot of people who like I'm super duper open to just questioning me. But yeah, is there one that I didn't speak to, or one that you like, a quality that you look for in a group that you want to share more?
I mean, I think you nailed it for the most part. I think for me, when I do go to that next step of processing with another person, I always talk about these layers of knowing, right? And so when you have an experience, you first have to seek that internal validation. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. Then I might go to like journaling and writing it down, because that's another layer of just like anchoring in this experience. Yes, this did happen. What does that mean to me? And then as I vocalize it, I'm using that throat chakra. I'm empowering my voice and validating this experience that happened with me with another person. Yeah. And then to also hear it reflected back from them without judgment, just with a sense of questioning that can help me to dive a little bit deeper into myself and peel back an even deeper layer. That's when I can really settle in, take back all of those things together to my guides, and really anchor in, Am I meant to do something with this?
Yeah.
Yes or no, where, why not, and with whom?
And I love this idea of questioning without judgment, because really the goal of your safe people that you share this information with, these experiences with, is about creating awareness for you. It's
Yeah.
not about them giving you a right answer or a wrong answer or a yes or no. That's not necessarily what you're looking for from this, whoever you choose, whether it's journaling, whatever that is. This next level of validation is you just want to have deeper awareness.
Yes. And I think once you have that deeper awareness and you're really anchored into what that is for you, then you get to choose, if you decide to do so, to share these experiences with people outside of that safe circle, right? We always talk about the levels of intimacy, of vulnerability with these different relationships that you have, right? And I may have a beautiful relationship with someone who just is in a different spot in their journey, right? They're still needing a little bit of convincing, but it's not my job to convince you. However, I do feel really anchored into this experience, and I want to bring you in and I want to share this with you. But your judgment on it, how you receive it, is not going to affect me, because by the time I share it with you, I'm very anchored into where it is. And that's super challenging.
Yeah, I feel like, especially when you're newer to the journey, or maybe you only had a few experiences like this, taking this kind of information to even the right person too soon before you feel really solid about it in yourself can be really hard. I feel like even when you've been on this journey for a long time, taking this information and really, it's kind of different. It's kind of weird. Okay. And when you share this information with people or your experiences with people, it can kind of throw you for a bit of a loop. And just being, when you can anchor it in and be a little more secure about the experience that you had, then it's just like being confident in who you are.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel rejection. You're not going to feel that same, because you can't have a trauma response from this sort of thing. You can. Absolutely.
I think too, it's really important for me. It's so important that I am very clear on if I am choosing to share this with someone that's like not my designated safe space, right? Why am I sharing it with them? I need to be like brutally honest with myself about, why do I feel the need to share this? Is it because I want them to handle me? Is it because I want them to receive it? Or is it because I am trying to form a deeper connection with them based on whatever this might be? Maybe I'm just planting a seed, and that's okay. But if I in any way feel responsible for how they receive it, I shouldn't be sharing it. That's like a hard rule that I have with myself. And it's taken me a very long time to fully accept and learn.
Yes. I really agree with that. I feel like if you are wanting to share information that you received with a person, or especially this really does apply when you're sharing information about someone else, because a big rule, like in me, a big rule in me, and a big rule from my teachers in all of the different energy work, all of the different modalities and whatnots, trainings that I've gone through, is you don't go picking around in people's energies without their permission. Like that is not okay. We do not go picking at people at the grocery store. We do not go picking you have to have consent.
Yes.
You have to have consent before you go digging around in people's energies. And this, sometimes in meditation, sometimes in these sort of things, it's a little dicey. It does start to draw the line. And of course, if it's coming to you and it's coming through you, like, don't feel like you were in meditation and then you were all of a sudden meddling where you didn't belong. There may be a piece of that information that you were meant to receive, and that is 100% okay. But when you go into sharing with another person, the motives behind it, like you were speaking to, I think is really interesting thing to contemplate. Why do I feel like I need to share this? Why am I trying to convince them? Why am I trying, like, whatever that is. And it's not to say nothing is right or wrong. And I say that all the time. Nothing is right or wrong. It just serves you where it doesn't. And you really got to take a minute to think about that. And so often you're going to come to the right conclusion if you just give yourself time and space to have the contemplation in the first place.
Yeah. And really, I don't think I would have learned how to have those conversations with myself, doing that inner questioning, if I didn't have my designated safe people who demonstrated how to do that with me.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned how to talk to myself through navigating these types of conversations with you and my other designated safe people. Like, what would Jasmine ask me in this situation? And that really helps. Yeah.
Well, and also if you have shared something, if you have messed up, that's okay. That's okay. It's okay that you have maybe done the wrong thing. It's okay, not even right or wrong. It's okay maybe that you have been haste about it. As long as when we communicate with people, we're communicating from the heart space. Ultimately, that's the rule above all things, right? If we're genuinely communicating from love and compassion for another person, it's okay. And just allow them time and space.
Yes. And also like grace and compassion for the fact that mistakes are how we learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though I made a mistake, I did the wrong thing, because I had that experience, I've learned from it, and it's shifted the way of how I do everything moving forward. So trust that those are learning experiences. And I feel like the universe puts those in front of us all the time. And like, if you made a mistake with me, like, guess what? We were meant to have that experience together, and we both learned something different from it. I have been able to like release a lot of guilt and shame for myself through that lens, and for others through that same lens. I feel like, you know, my mantra is, when I know better, I can do better. And if I make different choices, then I get to sit with those. But having those safe people in your life and really learning the line of questioning that is right for you and in those relationships, so that you can figure out, what am I meant to do with this information that I've just received major downloads in a way I never thought that I would receive them. Is it real? Now, yeah. WTF. So once you've kind of navigated that conversation with yourself, with your safe places, how do you determine for yourself if you're meant to share that with other people, or what you're meant to do with it at all, if anything?
I feel like if you do not know with 100% certainty, like just clear, like it's just a yes or no. After having conversation, it's a no. It's not right now. Wait, like you will know. There isn't a question as to whether you'll know if you should share or not. In my situation, in my experience with myself, and even with some other people who I've coached, but I don't think I ever leave those conversations or those contemplations questioning still if I should tell someone. Usually it's pretty clear, like yep or no. Is that your experience? Have you had other thoughts? Or
yeah, I think depending on where you are in your journey is how you're going to interpret that for yourself, right? Yeah. Some people are very tuned into their body, and they know from how their body feels if it's a yes or a no. Some of us receive just an inner knowing. We might hear a voice, we might see a symbol. However, whatever your what are all the words? There's like claircognizance, clairvoyance, the clair, whatever your clair is, that's what it is. Learning to trust that. And that's a whole other process. I feel like we could do a whole other episode on that if we wanted to.
I think we could do like 45 episodes on that. Think of that.
Right? I actually had an experience with a friend just in the last week. I have recently been tapping into a new clair for myself, and it has been quite the shock to my system. And she offered me some beautiful advice, I think, she was sharing some of her own experiences. And as things start to open up to you, as you start to dive into these new experiences, you're not always meant to do something with them. Sometimes it is just you exercising a muscle. Right? It's starting to grow. We have growing pains, and you're learning to adjust to this newness within you and this new reality that you're seeing or feeling or hearing or whatever. And sometimes just allowing it is enough. Yeah. Are you able to just let it be without having to do anything with it? And when you're really able to allow that experience and like be settled in it, then you will start to allow it to grow into whatever it needs to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you took the question to that place, because when you do talk about the clairs and the way, like, are you a feeler? Are you a knower? Do you see things? That's a whole nother level of trusting your intuition and trusting yourself. And like you said, playing with it, knowing. For me, I'm a huge body feeler. Like I will feel in my body, yes or no. And then I will have the kind of knowing that goes along with that. Like my body, the way that I read things and the way that I read things and the way that I see things and I feel things, it is very much through the body. And so there's a flowy openness that kind of comes through my body when it's a yes. And then there's a constrictiveness when it's a no. And it's almost like, for me, when I know I need to share with someone, I almost can't stop it. It's like I find myself going to share the information before, but I do have to honor and say I have been on the journey a long time, and it hasn't always been that way for me. Earlier on in my journey, there was much more hesitation and much more contemplation and thinking that would happen for myself before I would go off and just share something with someone. Especially in my situation today, where it was not necessarily prompted. Like it wasn't so much that I was in session with someone. It was more in my own private practice that was happening. And in that situation, I would even say too, how did the experience come across for you? Like, were you in session with someone? That kind of creates its ownness. If I was in session with someone and an experience happened, I would be much more likely to share early on because we were in session and that was what we were doing. If I was in meditation group, if I was in that sort of setting, for me as a practitioner, as someone who does this work, but I think it could be very similar for the person also receiving in that situation too, because you're in connection, you're in contract, you're in that space and that energy together. So it's very likely that the other person is having a piece of that experience with you. But when you're kind of on your own and in your own meditation practice and something happens, that for me tends to be the time where I have a bit more contemplation as to whether I'm going to share something with someone or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like so much of this, I mean, obviously dedicated time and space, the intention of that is very different in session and meditation group, those kinds of things. But when you're just like by yourself, by your lonesome, or maybe you're with other people and having an unsolicited experience is like, it can be really overwhelming. And even when you do have those experiences where it is dedicated time and space, okay, like we shared this information. Now I have to like go back out into the world and like, what do I do with it now? You know, like how, because I would love for just everyone around me to be on the same path or the same part of their journey so that we can see through the same lens, but that is not the way that the world works. And I think it's beautiful that it isn't, because we get all these different perspectives, right? But it can be really challenging. So I love the integration piece of it is so important, because it's not just, am I meant to share this with another person? Because whatever that exchange looks like is not only going to change life for them moving forward, it's going to change life for me moving forward. Yeah. These are really the experiences that changes the pair of glasses that we see the world through.
Yeah. One of my favorite podcasters, he talks about life before an experience and life after an experience. And that's really, I feel like this whole podcast and Rest We Peace, or in Peace and Rest We Peace, and in Peace We Rest is really about that. Like, how do we find peace in these interactions with people? And that's really this conversation, this question, this whole line of being. How do you interact? How do you take the old you and the new you, and how do you create this person that can interact with people who you just met and interact with people who you've known forever and be the true you. And that's really what we're talking about here. Every episode is about that. Everything that we're going to talk about from this podcast to the next one, this episode, and to the next. I'm very excited today, and my energy is so jittery. So bear with us. Yeah. Anyways, so that's what we're doing here.
I love that you spoke to that, because I feel like once you get to the space in your journey, there's such a desire to bring everyone that you love along with you. And we like to think that that's for them, right? Like, I just tried this best thing ever, and now you have to try it so that you can be happy like me. But it's really not about them. It's about you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I want you to be here with me in it, so I'm not alone.
Yeah.
That's really where that's anchoring into. And so when we can get really clear on who we are, why we are, and loving all of that, then we get just to be as we are. And the people around us will either love and embrace that, or they won't. And they will naturally fall away. And that's such a beautiful, messy process. And I love it. It is like so challenging, because there's so much judgment and fear that comes up within that. And there's also just like the universe bringing people towards you when you are truly standing in your power, in your true authenticity, everything that you are. And so much opens up for you after that. So much opens up for you after that. And of course, like, we miss who we were and the people that were there with us in the end. But I don't know about you, but in my experience, the people that have naturally fallen away after something like that has never been ugly.
No.
It's just been like a natural distancing.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like as I started to have more experiences and more, most of my experiences are experiences in connection, right? As I started to have more of those experiences, I brought people in my life who were having similar experiences started to come in. And people who just weren't interested in that, and their life path, their life journey wasn't that, at least maybe for this season or this time, they just weren't around. And it was never a conversation that I ever had to have. And it was never any. I have so much love and compassion for people who are like my best friends, who were everything to me, and who now are just maybe not playing as big of a role in my life. And that's okay. And there is no judgment of them. And I really truly don't believe there's any judgment of me for them either. They probably are feeling very much the same thing, because I can run into them at the grocery store or whatever, and we have lovely conversations, and then that's just it. And we don't even say, oh, let's make plans. It's just like, oh, well, I hope you have a really great day. And then off you go into the next piece of it. And so often it feels like there has to be this like beginning and this end to things. And it's just not the case. It really is like this rolling movement of life. And not everything is in a hurry. And I feel like that's also some advice and some thoughts to contemplate as you have experiences, are you feeling rushed to be somewhere? Are you feeling rushed to do something? Maybe that's a clue to hang tight just a second, to slow down, come back into your body. Because when you know, and if you don't know yet, then it's not time. If it feels so urgent that you have to do something about it, take that one more second and question it. Because seldom do urgent matters require urgent responses. Unless someone's bleeding to death right in front of you, you're probably okay to take a couple more seconds.
Yeah, I feel like, especially with this work, reactive is never the space that you want to come at things from. We never want to be reactive in sharing our spiritual experiences, or even advising on other people's spiritual experiences, which is why I really do love to navigate these conversations through the art of questioning and playful contemplation.
And yeah, if you haven't found those people in your life yet, if you don't have that circle of people that you can playfully contemplate with, ask for them to come into your life. take some time and just say, Spirit, I'm looking for these people now, because they are and do exist everywhere. There are these people.
100%. Yes. Invite them in and like put yourself out there, seek out a local integration group, seek out a community in which you feel like you might be able to connect with, and just trust the people that come into that. I absolutely love integration group at the studio because it is that safe place where everyone can come and share the crazy shit that they experience in their meditation that week and say, what am I supposed to do with this? Or what do you think this means? Or this is what I think it means. And there's no judgment, literally no judgment. And it's so wonderful to see people come into that space like tense and just like, oh, I don't know, a little hesitant. And then everyone just immediately soften, and then they're connected and bonded because they do see themselves reflected back in everyone with them. Like, okay, I am you, you are me. I'm not crazy. We're all on this crazy ride together. Mm-hmm. Thank you for holding space for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that those people exist everywhere. And if you are near us, if you're in Ogden, then come find us, come hang out with us, because that is what we want to do. And ultimately my goal, and I know your goal too, Roxy, is to create this space where people can have those healthy relationships and they can learn to contemplate with compassion and love, and really just hoping to create awareness for another person and less about judgment.
Yes. I think the first step to receiving any of that is believing that it exists for you. So if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, oh, that's all great in theory, but I'm just not that person, or those people don't exist for me. Like that thinking and those conversations that you're having with yourself, like those have to be the first thing to change. Trust and believe that everything that you want and desire and need is readily available and waiting for you. All you have to do is be open to receiving it. And I feel like listening to this podcast is a beautiful step in the right direction. So on that note, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's podcast. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close today, Jasmine?
No, I feel complete.
This was fun. I enjoyed this episode today.
Me too. And I feel like I have like 17 other ideas for the next episode. I'm like, and then we're going to talk about this next, and then this next, and then this next. And it's like, so anyway.
Notebook engage. Thank you guys so much for listening. Join us next week. We will be back. Enjoy the rest of your day. May you find peace today.
Yeah, see ya.